It seems like the news headlines are full of Silicon Valley companies that are unable to get diversity and inclusion right. The newly released Fortune 500 includes a drop in female CEOs to just 24. Uber has a fresh sexual harassment lawsuit before it. The Me Too movement still gets frequent mention, but some wonder whether it has sufficient traction. But perhaps, as our speaker will explore today, getting in diversity and inclusion right isn't the point or even the end goal. Instead, maybe we should approach diversity and inclusion the way we approach other business challenges, by being agile. Today's speaker is Jessie Woolley-Wilson, CEO of edtech company Dreambox and a graduate of Harvard Business School. Jessie has worked in education and technology for nearly 20 years to support school and district leaders to improve learning and life outcomes for K-12 students. Prior to joining Dreambox, she served as president of Blackboard's K-12 group and president of LeapFrog SchoolHouse, the K-12 division of LeapFrog Enterprises. She also served in leadership positions at collegeboard.com, the interactive division of the College Board, and at Kaplan, the leading test preparation company in the United States. Throughout her life and career, Jessie has been driven by the singular belief that all children need and deserve high-quality learning opportunities, regardless of who they are or where they live. It is no surprise, then, that Jessie applies the same idea to her management techniques. She has been an outspoken proponent of diversity and inclusion in business, and I know she will have some practical and helpful insights for us today about what it takes to create a truly diverse and inclusive organizational culture. Following Jessie's remarks, Kathy Yates will join her in conversation. Kathy is passionate about working with enterprises that combine business sector discipline and public sector impact, and has held a variety of such positions during her 30-year executive career. After graduating from Stanford's Graduate School of Business, Kathy joined Knight Ritter's local newspaper, the San Jose Mercury News, serving as its chief financial officer and general manager, director of business development for Knight Ritter Corporate, and co-founder and CEO of Knight Ritter New Media. Kathy has also served as a VP of product for Women.com, president and COO of MarketWatch, and CEO of AllBusiness.com. In 2010, Kathy joined San Francisco-based Teachscape, an online learning and analytics firm dedicated to helping educators boost their teaching effectiveness, serving as COO in 2010 and as CEO from 2011 to 2014. After their conversation today, there will be time for questions from the audience. There will also be an opportunity for you to provide us some feedback in the evaluation tool on your seat. And we ask that you take a few moments after the program to fill it out, because we greatly appreciate your feedback and we use it. It helps us to decide which topics to cover in the center, and it also invites you to get more information from the center. And last but not least, we invite you to join us for a reception following today's event. And with that, please help me in joining to Santa Clara University, Jessie Woolley-Wilson.
Well, good afternoon. I could think of a lot of things you could do here instead of coming here. I'm from Seattle, and that sunshine, I know you take it for granted, but I don't. Wish we could have a class outside. I thought I'd start by just talking about why I do what I do, because I'm somebody who ended up doing what I'm doing as a result not of planning, not of a great vision, but what I call planned happenstance. So I like to describe myself as a fallen banker. I did the thing I was supposed to do, and I went to New York, but I ended up in a bank training program because I was an English major at UVA, because my parents told me to go to school to learn humanities, to learn from literature, to learn about life from literature, and to experiment with things that I might discover I liked. Discovery. We're going to come back to discovery in the Agile model. And so I took organic chemistry because I was curious about it. People thought I was crazy, but I did it. I took Shakespeare's treatment of women. I took a cool music class about how Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Heart Club, it's amazing what you remember, had similarities with Mozart. I was in a phase of discovery. And what I learned was what I liked. And what I learned was that I like to learn. And what I learned is what I don't like. And that's what my charge was from my parents. And so when I graduated from UVA, my English degree, I did a honor paper on Shakespeare's treatment of women. And I liked that. And I told my parents, I'm one of 7 kids, my father grew up in as a Roman Catholic, and he went to a Jesuit K through 12 institution in Haiti. He's an immigrant. And I declared to them that I was going to go to Yale and get a PhD, a terminal degree, because that's what immigrants do. And my parents said, you're one of 7 kids. I said, yes, I'm going to make you proud. Well, how are you going to pay for that degree? I said, well, I mean, you're supporting education, you paid for all that. You need to pay some taxes. So the second concept I'm going to talk to you about is adaptation. So I went to the recruiting office and I said, my parents are reneging on what they've told me they would do for all these years. What am I going to do? You should go to a bank training program. Well, how do I figure out where do you want? I get to go to Gotham, New York City, so I'll go do a bank training program in New York City. Did really well in the way banking's, if you do well, you get your plum pick job. So I worked on the Venezuelan debt restructuring, third world debt restructuring, because why? I could go to Venezuela, understand the culture and food and whatever. So always thinking and learn adaptation. The third concept I'll talk to you about is learning. So I worked really hard on the third world debt restructuring. We had a very successful business, and I felt unfed. So I remember being in New York and taking the A train up to Harlem 3 days a week, 6 o'clock, so I could tutor kids. And I did that, I told myself to be a good community citizen, but I realized that it filled me. It filled me. I would come back about 7:30, 8 o'clock and continue to work in banking till, 11 o'clock or, whoever would stay the latest. And someone came up to me and said, you're spending all your time and your passion with kids. Why don't you get into education? I'm like, oh, people like me. I mean, I could never be a teacher, people like me. Well, why don't you bring your business acumen into education? What would that career path be? Well, there's no career path, but you should bring your business acumen to education. And so I had a conversation with Stanley Kaplan, and he wanted me to come, and I said, test prep is in education. Like, I'm not going to. This is a time when the Washington Post was buying the centers. And I made a deal with Stanley that if I could give scholarship to first-generation collegians, that I would come. So I felt pretty proud of myself. And then I realized that what I had negotiated was profits, not bookings, despite my laudable business degree. So they sent me to the worst performing region of Kaplan centers in the country for the past 10 years. And they said, yeah, you can take 10% of your profits and give it out in scholarships. Well, in 14 months, I made that profitable. So another thing I'm going to talk to you about is following your passion. The only reason why I went there was because I knew that I had amazing benefits because I had great shepherding and I had access to an excellent education. And when we came home from, first grade on, it was about college. What are you going to do at college? And there were a lot of people, especially immigrants, who worked so hard, 3 jobs, and didn't have a pathway to college. Passion, purpose, very powerful. So Agile. So how many people are in technology? Okay. So technology has evolved over time from kind of a waterfall, the minimum viable product. So you figure out what you're going to build and you build it, and then you bring it to market. You spend a lot of time in product management designing what that minimally viable product is. You build it at high cost and you bring it to market. It wasn't working all that well. The Agile methodology has changed software development. So you start small, you have a notion, it's based in experimentation. You have that notion, you test it on a small audience, you get feedback, you learn, you adapt, and then you make it better. You make it better over and over and over again. And over time, maybe 6 months or maybe 12 months, you actually built something that's viable. Not because you had an initial idea and you waterfalled that idea, but because you iterated, you started, you learned, you adapted. I think one of the things that holds back diversity and inclusion efforts is people get stuck on the big idea. How do we fix that thing? And when they get overwhelmed by the big idea, guess what happens? They don't start. They don't put their toe in the water. We are so worried about getting the label. Sexist, racist, intolerant, whatever. But oftentimes we don't want to talk about it, let alone do something about it. So I'm a proponent of the Agile methodology in life, actually. I didn't realize it when I was in college or when I was early in my career, but I've been focused on experimentation, adaptation, and change, innovation, I would say, as part of this Agile process. And I just didn't have a label or a framework for it. But it's rooted in discovery, but it's based on one thing, which is something that we don't talk about enough when we talk about, in my mind, diversity and inclusion. It's rooted in belief. So if you fundamentally believe that there is a cognitive difference, bell curve, we've all read it, between kids who look one way and kids who look another way, you might actually believe, sincerely, no malice, that you're doing the best with what you have. If your belief framework is different, however, and you believe that every child has a spark, and every child deserves an engaging, personalized, and efficacious learning experience, when that child fails, you iterate, you adapt, because you know there's something there, and you just haven't figured it out yet. I think we are so anchored in old notions of what we have to do for diversity and inclusion that we don't even realize that our own thinking is calcified. I mean, when you think about Silicon Valley and you think about a lot of leaders in Silicon Valley, they would label themselves as progressive. They're some of the hardest people to convince to change what they do because they're the good guys, underscore guys. They're the good guys. And so because we have big notions, waterfall notions about what should happen, quota, not quota, and I think we bring deficit thinking to it. How do we manage diversity? We need to change that paradigm from deficit to opportunity. What's the opportunity in diversity? We live in there's a demographic imperative. We can say it's not happening, but there's a demographic imperative. And if we feel like diversity of thought, big D, not just ethnic and cultural, but big D, diversity of thinking, if we believe that that's a requirement for success, for innovation, for customer satisfaction, for high retention rates, for building sustainable organizations, then we're going to see diversity as an opportunity, not something to manage, but something to leverage. So when people think about calcified notions, I'll give you one that I don't like. Would you say, if I said that America is a melting pot, that that's a positive thing? Right? It's a calcified notion. It's a melting. Everything comes into an amalgam. You got yellow goes in, red goes in, green, purple, and you got brown. You got a beautiful brown amalgam. What if we thought about America as a quilt? So you have different colors, you have different fabrics. And the key is not to make yellow brown. The key is to weave them together in a way that you create a blanket that provides comfort and warmth to all. We spend so much time trying to think about how to get everything in the same calcified notion that we give up, without even knowing it, all the beauty and opportunity with diversity. Diverse thought, diverse background, diverse experience, diverse economic, SES, diversity. If I say diversity, everybody has something that comes to mind. Might be racial, might be gender, but if we think about diversity with a big D, and we just see it as a pragmatic opportunity to experiment, to adapt, to learn, to innovate, we might see diversity as a pathway to creating sustainable organizations. So what does it have to do with education? I would say that in public education, like you guys know where we are, it's more segregated ethnically and socioeconomically than it has been since even before Brown versus Board of Education. I mean, there was a time when people who looked like me lived in neighborhoods where teachers and bus drivers and doctors and dentists and scientists, et cetera, they were all there. And you might walk around and say, I'm going to be like Mr. Jones, or I'm going to be like Mrs. Smith. And now, in diverse neighborhoods in the United States, there's calcified lack of opportunity. And kids don't even have the opportunity to imagine themselves in as many diverse roles. An unintended consequence. But if we had an agile approach to diversity and inclusion, we would be more intentional about what we were doing in those communities than we are. So what does that mean for executives? So I don't think I have a really good understanding of what the magic sauce is for diversity. But what I do have is tenacity. What I do have is a willingness to put my toe in the water. And what I do have is a wide aperture to learn from when I make mistakes. So I'll give you a big D example. About a year and a half ago, one of my top engineers came in and said, Jessie, I think you're an excellent CEO for extroverts. I'm like, well, does that mean I'm doing okay? I just want you to know I'm an introvert, and most people on your development team are an introvert, and I love listening to you, and I think you're a great leader for Dreambox, but when I'm in a leadership meeting and you call me, cold call me, and you ask me what I think, I want to crawl under a rock. I'm like, I'm giving you an opportunity to lead. I want to hear your voice. You're brilliant. That's not how I roll. I said, well, what are we going to do? We have to, like, get you a coach. And he's like, yeah, or you could figure out a way to adapt. I mean, we are an adaptive learning company, and I feel like we're asking kids to adapt and teachers to adapt, and we're not adapting much at Dreambox. Ouch. So I said, I think I need your help to be a better leader. I can't be a leader, a good, effective leader only for extroverts. What should I do? And he's like, you're doing it again. I'll get back to you in a couple days. So in a couple days he came back, and he had a book for me, and it was called Quiet. You guys know it? I had never heard of it. I've read it twice. And now I have more thoughtful agendas that I send out a week ahead of time, and I send him a note about things I really hope he's interested in contributing to, and I have to work harder. Like, this isn't like, I like to do my leadership when I don't have to think about it. I don't want to have to think about adapting and changing. And he is amazing. He's come to life. And he's told people at the water cooler, yeah, I really helped her. She no idea. And here it is. I had a calcified notion of what leadership was that was probably shaped at HBS about that extrovert, that go-get-em, that triple type A, roll over everybody else person, and that was not fueling innovation. And if we had lost him, he is a genius. He is an invaluable contributor to our secret sauce, our sequencing engine, our algorithms, our innovation, and he felt out of place. And what I tried to do as a leader is try to help him. I offered a coach, like he was going to do the adaptation. And I think if we applied this lesson to our efforts in diversity and inclusion, we will understand why we're failing. Because it's everybody else who has to make a change. It's not us. It's all those crazy people, or everybody else has to make a change, but not us. So I was telling some students earlier today that part of a group that's called DENT, I don't know if you've ever heard about it. It's like when TED was actually an intimate conversation versus like a grab bag. Maybe I shouldn't have said that. And there are about 150 people that gather, and we were gathering in Sun Valley, not the most diverse place in America, Idaho. And I was the only African American there, only person of color there, with about 150 people. I was speaking, but somebody else came up after me, and she began her talk, her dent talk, by saying, everybody's racist. People were like, who is it? And she was kind of like unsure ethnicity. Like, was she allowed to say that? Like, if she's a person of color, she can say that. But like, if she's not a person of color, maybe I'm going to be upset. Like, what is she? And she paused, and she said it again. Everybody's a racist. So she got everybody's attention, just like I ever. So the phones went down. Everybody's leaning. What's she going to say next? She said, we spend so much time trying to prove that we don't harbor intolerances, biases. We spend all of our time defending that. I wish we could spend all that, well, I wish we would just say that it's human, maybe it's Darwinian, that we are tribal, and just accept that everybody's tribal, and spend less time trying to defend that, and more time trying to figure out what to do about it. Like, what should we do? If we're all tribal, what should we do about it? And I'm like, wow, look at all these people. She's got all these people's attention. She's gonna get all these people who don't even know what to say to me when they see me in the hallway to like change. They're talking to them, so I thought I could pick up my iPhone. She said, so I want you each to think about your social media, your Facebook, or whatever it is, and I want you to make a mental picture of the profile of people that are in all of your channels. Where they go to school, where they work, where do they worship, how old are they? And she went down like 13 categories. And I'm like, yeah, look at these people. They realize that they're all narrowly. I'm like, African-American woman, I got it. Like, I could do this talk with her. The more she talked, the more insecure I got. So I'm looking at my thing going, I don't see much economic diversity. I don't see much age diversity. I don't see much LGBTQ. And so I was like, she's talking to me. So I went up to her afterwards, and I'm like, I got to tell you, I came here in the beginning of your talk, I thought you were talking to the 149 people around me. And I was feeling pretty confident. And then about halfway through, I started to feel a little insecure. And I was like, she's talking to me. So does that mean that everybody's on the same spectrum? Probably not. But does it mean that we all have inclinations toward tribalism that we have to resist and move beyond? Probably so. And so instead of trying to fix that, if we just take micro steps, I think it can add up to something powerful. So I read an article about a year ago that said that many women are disadvantaged because when they come in for an interview situation, they're typically asked how much they make. And if a woman is making 30% less than a guy, and you ask the woman and the guy what they make, and you're like, I'm going to give her a 15% raise, or maybe I'll give him a 15% raise. Well, she's still behind. So I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. It's compounding error. So I called my HR lead, and I'm like, no more, we can't ask anybody for their salaries anymore at Dreambox. We're going to, get every job. We're going to decide what percentage of the market we're going to pay, probably 110% for technology because of what you guys are doing down here. And maybe 65, 75, we're a startup, we don't have a lot, we have limited capital. And we're going to have a philosophy, a compensation philosophy, and we're not going to ask anybody. And if the job is $140,000, I don't care what they made before, we're going to pay them $140,000. And people were like, my managers came into me, what are you talking about? We're going to just burn our cash, and we're going to pay people more than we have to. Are we going to pay people more than we have to? Or are we going to pay people what we should? It's a cultural change. Another example, a CFO left Dreambox a couple years ago for a family situation. And my board said, when are you going to hire your next CFO? I said, I'm thinking about it. I don't know if we're not going to raise any more money. We're cash flow positive. I'm not going to raise more money. I don't know if I need that skill. And I have a woman who's a rock star, a budding rock star. Oh, but what is that going to mean for you? You're going to have to do more. You're going to have to stretch. But she's really something special. So I brought her in my office and I said, are you interested in stretching? What do you mean? Well, expanding your responsibilities. Put you on a VP track and we'll see what happens. But this is what it's going to mean. I need you to do this and this and partner with me on this and the executive team on this. And her eyes got, and she's like, and she got disheartened. She said, I can't do it. I can't give up my Thursdays. I'm like, well, why are we talking about your Thursdays? Well, I just had my second child, and when Peter was here, he let me do all of my, my doctor's appointments and this and that on Thursdays. And like, I'm not an insane mother because of that. I just can't give it up. I said, well, I'm glad that you told me what you need. Can we go back to, do you want to stretch for the job? Because I'm not asking you about when you're going to work. I'm asking you about, what do you want to step into this role? And she's like, but how can I be in a VP role if I don't work in the office every Thursday? And I said, your impact is going to be great whether or not you come in on Thursday or not. And I actually don't care when you come into work and when you leave. I care about your impact. And she started crying. And she is a rock star. I will be privileged to have her as a CFO one day. It's going to be a challenge, frankly, to keep her because she's a rock star. And because I keep talking about her at places like this. But I remember feeling, am I adding risk to Dreambox at this stage if I do this? Am I going to lose clout with my board that feels pretty good about me? Is that what I should do? And I didn't know what was going to happen, but I had faith and belief. I was willing to experiment. I figured the two of us together could adapt if it wasn't going to work. We had outlets. We're going to check in at 3 months. We're going to check in at 6 months. You got to be honest with me and tell me if it's working. And then we would learn, and then we'd innovate. Agile process to diversity and inclusion. So I'm not here to tell you that there's a formula. I'm just here to encourage you to put your toe in the water and to know that 9 times out of 10, you're probably not going to get it right. It's not going to end up the way you begin. It's not going to be the same way it ends. But that's the beauty and the opportunity of Agile. You don't have to have pressure about getting it right like you did with the waterfall method. All you have to do is have the courage to start. But you have to start with the belief that what you're doing is actually something that's based in opportunity versus something that's based in deficit or scarcity. And oftentimes when people think of diversity, they think about what? Lower quality, quotas, all the things, right? What if you turn that paradigm upside down and said, let me look at diversity through the lens of opportunity, knowing that whatever I do, it might be a mistake. But if it's a mistake, I just learn. I experiment, I learn, I adapt, I innovate. And then I start it all over again. The Agile method has a lot of opportunity for all of us. I use it with diversity and inclusion in mind, but honestly, if I'm a successful CEO, Dreambox Learning, all functions, will have an Agile philosophy and ethos. I'm not there yet, because you have to encourage people to experiment and to fail. I should ask people more as a leader, what's something that you did since we last spoke that you failed in? And what did you learn from it? And over time, you desensitize failure, and it just becomes a proxy for learning. That's what we ask kids to do to our software. That's what we're going to ask future workers to do in terms of innovation. Mistakes are required for innovation. At Dreambox Learning, our algorithms wouldn't be powerful. Our sequencing engine wouldn't be as accurate if we didn't collect and analyze student mistakes. No value without mistakes. Yet we're so fearful of mistakes. Belief, courage, learning, adaptivity, innovation. The Agile method for diversity and learning. Diversity and inclusion. Thank you.
So, Jessie,
Yes.
you've given us a lot of material. Start a conversation around here. So for the audience, we've got microphones set up on the side, and we're going to invite you to come to them to ask your questions. But let me kick it off here with a couple of things that maybe can get us into some of the depths of what you've already touched on, and maybe a little provocation as well.
Yeah.
So one of the things about the Agile method is that you can do some little market tests about an idea or hypothesis that you have. And some of the best learning, as you talked about, comes from the failures. So you gave some great examples, but they were all successful, right? The outcome was successful. Can you share with us maybe a time when you were pursuing an agile approach and it didn't turn out so well?
So it's interesting, the takeaway, because I don't think that my engagement with my engineer was very successful. It was a very dark moment for me. But the whole point is that it's not so much about the fall, it's about the recovery. And I wallowed in because I thought I was a pretty good leader until then. And now I'm in a different chapter, and I'm going to be a better leader because of him. So one of the values at Dreambox that we hold dear is something I call benevolent friction. We want to be hard on ideas but soft on people. And I really felt that this engineer cared about me. He wasn't very optimistic that I could adapt, but he cared about me, and he thought it was his obligation to tell me that I was not as successful as he suspected I thought I was, and he was right. And so I don't really think about things that don't work. I think about things that don't work yet. And so it's hard for me to answer that question, because most everything that ended up as a success started with failure. Mm-hmm. I just think about it has not worked yet.
Okay, so fair enough.
Yeah.
So in your own career,
Yeah.
You were clearly a pioneer in terms of going to business school, entering the banking world, entering the ed technology world, as a woman of color, as a woman. Was there any particular point at which you felt like you were being blocked and there was a person in particular that helped you break through in a way that you're now able as a CEO to turn around and give back a similar way?
So when I was in banking, I worked for an extraordinary woman who saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. And she said, "You're really good at this business stuff. You should get an advanced degree. You should go to Harvard." And I was like, "I'll go to Pace, and I'll work at night." She's like, "I won't write a letter recommendation for you if you don't apply to Harvard. If you don't get into Harvard, we'll talk about it, but you're going to apply to Harvard." I'm like, whatever. So I kind of procrastinated. I didn't do anything. She came up to me and she said, "When am I going to see the application?" So I finally applied and forgot about it. And I don't know, 6 months later, I got a call in my office, and somebody from HBS said, "I want to congratulate you on being admitted to the Harvard Business School." And I was like, "Oh, can we talk about deferment?" And she said, I'll never forget this, "We haven't invited you to defer." So I kind of said I would get back to her, and I think maybe 17 minutes later, Joanne was in my office. She said, "I just got the most interesting phone call. And they told me that you said no, and I told them that you were just so thrilled that they probably didn't understand what you said. And I want you," and I said, "But Joanne, I can't go and leave you. We had this thing where we're successful." And she said, "You don't even see it. You don't even see it. You're going to go and you're going to do great things. And it's not going to be necessarily here." And later on, I had an opportunity to thank her, and she said that she was so amazed that I didn't seem to see the impediments at the bank. I was lucky I had her as a manager. Not everybody has that. And the example she gave was that most of the trainees, I think we were called at that point, were taken up to the top floor for the meal. Do you guys know this? And they sit you down, and they have all 4 forks on one side, And they want to know how you're going to conduct yourself in an environment. Does she know the right fork? Does she know? And so they invited me. I was like, wow, I'm going upstairs, and the food's going to be really good. It's going to be free. And I was talking and whatever, and I just did my thing. And Joanne said, "You didn't even realize that was a test. You were just talking to them about what did they do and what brought them into banking. And so I don't know if that's just a coping mechanism. Because frankly, it would be very difficult for me to get up every morning if I felt like I had to fight every day. I fundamentally believe that there are more good hearts out there than bad. There are people on either side that have calcified notions of what's possible, and they try to put a mask on me, lazy, stupid, whatever. But the vast majority of people don't believe that. And if they do believe that, I convince myself that they just don't know me. They don't know me. And if they knew me, they wouldn't have that. Which is why it's so important for kids in public schools to get exposure to difference, all kinds of difference, so that they can develop a resiliency to it, and so that they can have good, positive interactions with people who are not like them in any way whatsoever, so that when they get out of that and they're no longer in that safe environment and they're tempted to go onto the dark side, they can remember a project with Charlie who didn't look anything like them. That was a positive thing.
So let's talk about adaptive technology,
Yeah.
the field that you're in. So I know as a Harvard Business School student, you probably got a lot of immersion in free market beliefs and orientations. Did you take an ethics course when you were at Harvard?
We were just joking about this. They piloted an ethics course, but I wouldn't call it a course because we didn't get credit for it. It was an exploration. And they got some funding from a grad, and it was like 6 months, I think. But it was this thing that sat separate to the real curriculum. And one of the things that I find so intriguing about the work here is that there seems to be a hunger for ethics curriculum rooted in behavior, in practice. And I think that there are a lot of schools, Harvard's doing better now, Stanford, there are a lot of schools that are taking it a little more seriously now. But I remember the last financial crisis, and I wrote down names of a lot of big banks, and then I looked at the leadership teams of a lot of those big banks, and they had something in common. And it started with an H, and then a B, and an S. And there's something that we need to do more. So for me, I don't think that, I have this notion, garbage in, garbage out. I don't think you're great because you go to Harvard or anywhere else. But I feel like the foundational knowledge around values, around human dignity, around treating people the way you want to be treated, it's not that complicated. I think that was present in me before graduate school. And I think the challenge is to create a fellowship of people who have similar beliefs so that when we all are tempted to move away from our core values, we get reinforcement and we get pushed back to our zone, our center. And I think sometimes leaders don't have that.
So I want to draw the linkage between my opening, which is about adaptive technology, and what you just described in terms of your responsibility as a leader to be thinking about ethical considerations. So in your field of adaptive technology, are there any fundamental ethical dilemmas that you struggle with in your
There are a lot.
day-to-day life?
So first, I'm part of an industry that has been promising to revolutionize something, and we've overpromised and underdelivered, and we are responsible for creating very skeptical points of view about the promise of technology and learning, and we own that. And so when I talk to teachers and they say, oh yeah, I've heard that before, and I doubt it, and I say, well, you're justified. And they look at me because I believe that they're justified. But that doesn't mean that every learning technology is unworthy of their time and consideration. And so I don't try to defend. I say we've made a lot of mistakes in the industry, but kids need something more. And you can hold me accountable, hold me responsible, but don't keep it away from kids, particularly if the kids who do have it are going to end up having a larger gap between the kids who do not have it. So I think that there are a lot of ethical dilemmas. So that's one, we overpromise. The second is that many people believe that learning technology should be designed to replace learning guardians. That is anathema to our belief at Dreambox Learning. We honor teachers We pulled teachers out of the classroom, nationally board certified teachers. We sat them down next to engineers and we said, collaborate and build something that these teachers, these experienced top teachers, would be honored to use in their classroom. And that's what we built. And so it's built by teachers for teachers. I actually have a little guilt about taking these amazing educators out of the classroom. And at some point when we have more capital, I'd like to talk with, I don't know, CZI, whomever, to see if we can create a sabbatical. One of my sisters, I'm one of 7 kids, one of my sisters is a 5th grade teacher in inner city Delaware. And she's amazing teacher. She's just amazing. She gave up a career in pharmaceutical marketing because it didn't fill her. And she's teaching kids. Like, it's amazing. And she's tired. She's weary. And she needs a break. But she loves her kids. If we could just give her a 2-year sabbatical at a company like Dreambox, and I would win by having all that knowledge about what teachers really need, and she would get restored somehow, and then she could rotate back into the classroom and inspire a new generation. We got to figure out a way to do that. Spread the love, so to speak, and keep great hearts and great minds in teaching.
That's terrific. Let me invite any of you that have questions. You can go to one of the microphones, and I'll be glad to take some questions from the audience here. But I'm going to keep going with Jessie, too. So let me just ask, do you think, as a society overall, business leaders tend to place enough value on ethical considerations in terms of what drives them in their decision making?
I don't think we're there. I've had the experience of working, so you learn in life. You learn from bad experiences and you learn from good experiences. And until Dreambox Learning, I have never had such a values-driven board and leadership team surround me. And in that environment, it's easy to bend toward the good. Because when you waver, forget about when you make the bet, even when you're contemplating making a decision to go to the dark side, somebody's poking you. And they're engaging in benevolent friction, and they're like, is that really what you want to do? And so I remember we were at a district in Missouri, and a teacher came up and said, you know, my kids are thriving on Dreambox Learning. I've heard you say you collect 50,000 data points per student per hour. What do you do with that data? I'm like, we use it to power the intelligent adaptive technology that we pioneered. We're able to give personalized, encouraging learning experiences to every child, regardless of where they are in their learning path, regardless of their zip code. I was like, so proud. She's like, Jessie, I think you're one of the good guys. She said guys, I remember that. But why don't you give it to me? That wasn't a proud moment for me, because we had a lot of success. We knew we were doing good things for kids, but we weren't doing it. And we love teachers. And we thought, my job is to make the teacher's job easier by having the technology recommend things. She's like, that's fine. But what about me? I'm a learner too. Ding, ding, ding. Went back and I said, I know that we want to take this up to high school. I know we want to go to preschool. We're going to reprioritize our product roadmap, and we are going to start experimenting with improving the educator experience. And they're like, we're all about the kid. You know, I came here for the kid. I'm like, exactly. Everybody's a learner. You're a learner, I'm a learner, teachers are learners. Teachers in grade school are not taught to be specialists in anything, right? They're generalists. And yet we want them to do specialized instruction for mathematics and everything else. Like, you don't get water from a rock. So let's invest in teachers as learners. Let's improve our professional development. We developed a job-embedded teacher professional development called MyFlex PD. That would never have happened. That was birthed through pain and humiliation. That's what that was, and it's a great thing. We're behind on preschool, we're behind on high school, but our teachers trust that Dreambox Learning respects them. So we'll get to the high school, and we'll get to the preschool. A little late, the marketplace, maybe there was an opportunity cost there, but we have very high satisfaction rates and very high retention rates because our teachers believe that their thumbprint is on this product because we're listening to them.
So I'm struck by your comment about the magic that is your culture, the company and the board, and I guess the leaders in your organization as well as your clients. Did that just happen? Was that happenstance? You talked earlier about
It was.
planned happenstance being part of your life.
It was planned happenstance. So my parents asked one thing of their kids, which is to get multiple generations in one house for at least a week, Rehoboth, Delaware. And they don't want any distractions. That's what they want. They want to tell the same old stories that the kids roll their eyes, Uncle Gray say, whatever. But that's how the kids are becoming fluent, so they're going to tell their kids. And there was July 2010, and I got a call, and it said, "Hello, this is Reed Hastings, and I'd like to meet you." I'm like, "Yeah, right, this is Reed Hastings." "No, this is Reed Hastings, and I'd like to meet you." And I said, tell me more." "Well, I just bought a company. It's an adaptive technology company. I think it's very interesting, and it needs leadership." And I said, "Well, let's get together. It sounds interesting. Let's get together in August." It was July 17th. He's like, "Well, I'd like to meet you this week." And I said, "I'm really very sorry, but I'm at the beach with my parents, but I can meet you in August." He's like, "Well, what if I come to you?" And I said, "There are no airports near Rehoboth. It's like 3 hours." You know, he's like, "Don't worry about the airport thing." And to make a very long story short, he flew to meet me from California. And we met in some bar somewhere, and he had like jeans and kind of a dirty t-shirt. And he was just and he talked about how society has to do better for all kids. He talked about his time in the Peace Corps. He talked about, I'm like, "Are we going to talk about this company?" And he asked me about what I cared about. He asked me why I was doing what I was doing. He asked me what inspired me. I'm like, "Are we going to talk about this company?" And then he asked to meet my husband, who was rotating outside waiting for this meeting to end. And when he met Dave, he looked at Dave and he asked Dave about it, and he didn't look at me. He talked to Dave, and he had such humanity and dignity. And I said, "I'm going to learn something from this man. The venture's probably not going to be successful, but I'm going to learn something from this man because he's serious." And there have been many, many times. So when I first got there, he wanted me to come, and it was a consumer proposition, and a lot of wealthy people, privileged people, had their kids on Dreambox. But he was dissatisfied that it was increasing the gap between the haves and have-nots and not helping. And I came in and I did my little HBS presentation, and I had my bullet points and the key takeaway when I first met the staff. And somebody came up to me and said, "It was a pretty nice presentation. I listened to you for an hour, and you did not say the word kid once. So you don't get Dreambox, and I'm going to leave." Like, I should have said the thing about Harlem and tutor. I was just like, this is what it is, marketplace opportunity, all that stuff you learn in business school. Uninspiring. And I said, "If you think I don't care about kids, then I failed that was my first, that was my debut. Not very, an inauspicious beginning." And he said, if you're not here for kids, then you're going to lose everybody." And I said, "So you have an opportunity to quit, if you want to quit. But why don't you stay and make me better and make Dreambox better?" And he's like, so I told him a little story about tutoring, and he stayed. He stayed for over 7 years. And he also told stories at the water cooler and so I feel like I was asked to make something good great. And when I went to Reed and I asked him for advice about how to change culture, he said, "Why do you want to change culture?" I said, "Because you almost went out of business, it's increasing the gap between the haves and have-nots, and da-da-da-da." He said, "But why do you want to change culture?" "Increasing the gap, you know." He said, "Well, what if you evolved culture instead?" I said, "Well, what's the difference?" He's like, Why have people feel badly about what they did and feel like a failure? Why don't you invite people to add to what you want to leverage the things that were great about their culture and build on it? Values-based leadership. Like, I am such a much better leader than I was before because I have been poked and prodded agile, and I've learned. And people were courageous enough to tell me when I strayed. Above me, beside me, beneath me.
So you strike me as somebody that's probably pretty good at listening. You've mentioned a number of circumstances in which people have dropped little gems on you that you had to pick up and take to heart. And I think we're living in a world now where you don't see a lot of that reflected in leadership. What made you such a good listener?
So it's a really great question. I haven't thought about this. I felt insecure taking the helm at Dreambox. It's a software company. I'm an English major from UVA. Like, are these guys going to listen to me, these technology people? What can I teach these people? So I'm like, I don't think I can really teach them much, but I can learn a lot. So I determined to learn as much as I could. The probability that I learned at HBS was like less than 5% likely that this thing was going to work. So I'm like, I'm going to learn. So the next opportunity I have, I'll be stronger, better. I'll have deeper experience. And I don't think I was a great listener. I really don't think. I think that insecurity and fear of failure put me in a position where I said, I need to get smarter every day. I need to see every person as a pathway to getting better at something. And discovery, my discovery was, what can I learn from this person? How can I be better at something from this person? So everybody was like someone that was going to make me more effective. And then I got to the point where I thought, this thing is actually working for kids. Parents trust it, kids love it, and learning guardians felt respected by it? Like, when does that happen? And I worked at LeapFrog, in good places. Never had the experience I had at Dreambox. I felt lucky. So I came to save. I don't say that with pride. And about a year into it, I realized that they had saved me, really. I actually had a pathway to being a decent leader because I came to Dreambox.
So I'm struck by your comment about being somebody that absorbs the lessons that are there to be learned in the environment. But I also wonder about your growth into your own stance as a leader. Before this session, we were talking a little bit about some of the circumstances in which leaders might find themselves. Yeah. And I want to pose a question to you about striking the balance between being a medium to reflect the culture that's around you that you can learn from and grow into versus the person that puts the stamp on what the culture is by the strength of your conviction and your own statement as to where you're going to stand.
It's really hard. This is really, really hard. I struggle with this. So on the one hand, I'll tell you in sobered moments that company culture cannot descend from above. If it does, it won't be permanent, it won't be organic, it won't be vibrant, it won't evolve.
From above, meaning from the CEO?
From the CEO. Company culture has to be something that taps into what people care about, what their values are, so that they protect it and grow it. And they introduce it to new people as you grow. And as the company gets bigger and bigger and bigger, you have to depend upon all the ambassadors in your company to keep it vibrant and meaningful and authentic. So that's what I say in my sober moments, and I believe that. And we worked really hard to codify some values like do well in order to do good. We had, when teachers came in, they're like, you're for profit. But if we could actually help more kids learn And in order for us to do that, we have to build a sustainable business. Do you really feel bad about having it be for profit? And if it's for profit and I can get the best talent and the best minds so that we can innovate, are you really going to feel bad what we can do for kids? So we had to recalibrate people's understanding of for-profit. Do well in order to do good. Literally, not do good in order to hope to do well. Do well to empower us to do good. Because there's so many ed tech companies, the third thing that we've done really poorly in ed tech is that we disappear. We say we're going to revolutionize, we're there for a year, and then we're gone. And people said, I've trained all my teachers, and it's 18 months. So I didn't celebrate when Amazon's 10mark shut down their business. Like, that made it harder for us because people don't trust. So it's really, really, really important to have the employee ambassadors be the owners of the culture. But every once in a while, there'll be an inflection point. And one of my inflection points came when my alma mater at UVA saw all that ugliness in August. And I was so outraged when I saw these white supremacists at my university. And then I learned that one of the leaders was a graduate. And I was so upset. And I thought, okay, body personal, body politic. Like, what you learn in business school is you keep all the professional stuff over here, and then you keep your personal stuff over, and I just didn't have it in me. And so I penned this letter to the company, and it was called Not My America. And I said, where is the America that cultivated people like Martin Luther King and Ida Wells, all these people? Where's that America? And where are the people who are standing up for that America? You know, democracy is like a marriage, you know? You got to work at it every day. We have to, we can hold it and we can strengthen it, or we can watch it dissipate. And I was just not going to have it. My father came here in pre-civil rights America and made all these sacrifices. He chose to come here in 1956 when he could have gone to, Switzerland or Sorbonne or something. He came here because of the promise of America, the strength of the idea of America. And we have to fight for it. And so I penned this thing, and then I looked at it, and I sent it out. And I'm like, oh, maybe I should tell the board I did that, because that might end up in social media. And so I sent it out, and I said, you might see this. And it did get picked up in Twitter. And I just want you to know I believe in this, and I have no apologies for this, but I want to give you a heads up in case somebody calls you about it. And Reed came back, and he said, beautiful note, Jessie. That was it. Values-based leadership. But I didn't feel 100% confident because I had never done anything like that. And here I am, a black woman CEO, and I usually don't talk about my stories and my frustrations because I have so much privilege. I don't think I'm worthy of that. But if people like me don't tell the stories that I have a hard time getting a cab in New York, or that Airbnb cancels my reservation or whatever it is, then people are going to think we're done because Obama was president. We have a lot more work to do. And people like me have to be more courageous and tell our stories and bring those worlds together. The body politic and the body personal have to come together. And if we do that, I think we can achieve authentic leadership that helps people understand what we care about and helps people align with us for what they care about too.
That's great. I think we have a question over here.
Okay, I'm just going to project.
Yeah.
My name's Lena, and I graduated from Santa Clara in 2017. And for the past 9 months, I was volunteering in Grace Harbor, Washington.
Yeah.
For about 2 hours.
Oh yeah, of course.
And I was working with high school students on more of an internship style program. But something that I learned more about was kind of just their high need in general for teachers and
Yes.
such a high turnover rate. And so I'm curious as to your thoughts, because I saw a lot of volunteers like myself going in and filling roles that I think, there could have been there's a lot more need for certifications and the qualifications necessary to teach in these high need areas. And then you have, on top of those needs, you have volunteers or students that are quite maybe ready to take on those challenges. So I'm curious if you have any thoughts as to kind of how you create these more sustainable educational systems that are stronger, but then also have kind of volunteers or just fulfilling the role of teachers themselves.
So this is like a waterfall problem. We do not support people like you enough. We have to figure out a way to inspire you to stay, even when it's hard, knowing that things can get better. Iteratively, things can get better. And I think that we've tried a lot of different models. We've taken kids from top schools and we've trained them and we said, go to inner city X and you have a big heart and make it work. And that was a good start, but it's insufficient. We have to iterate and learn and adapt. And most importantly, we have to ask people like you what you need to feel successful and support it. And instead of just trying to fit you in a model, we should say, how is it going in 30 days? What do you need that you're not getting? And then we should scale those things nationally that we learn from people like you. You have a lot of wisdom. You're right there close. You know so much more about what teachers need than I could ever guess at. And we have to be proximate. So Bryan Stevenson, do you guys know Bryan Stevenson? Mm-hmm. He has this notion about proximity. You know, proximity leads to understanding, and deeper understanding leads to empathy. And he believes that we would do so much better as a society if we were more empathetic. And we can't be empathetic because we do things to people and for people instead of with people. So what we need to do for brave, amazing people like you is we have to ask you what you need before you get there, soon after you arrive, because you're going to discover in an agile way that what you thought you needed is insufficient or different. And we need to be there for you to give you the support that you need. And then we have to admit when things fail. I'm totally supportive of good schooling. I don't care if it's religious, public, charter. I have a little affinity for public because of the social dynamic that happens, but I want every child to have access to an excellent learning experience. And we've just got to figure out a way to get more people to bring their skills and talents, even like my sister, who stepped off. Like, if we lose her, what a disaster is that going to be? We need to figure out a way to get proximate to people like you so that we can adapt while you're still there, so that an internship turns into a full-time thing, even if it's for 5 years of your life. And then we have to get people who, like my sister, who are mid-career, and maybe she's going to give 10 years. But every kid that experiences my sister is blessed, I'm convinced. And so why does it have to be a 40-year model? Let's experiment. Let's adapt. Let's figure out what we need to win collectively for kids, for families, for communities, for our democracy, for the world.
I think you struck a nerve.
Yeah, my
Any
sister's
other
so
questions? Step up to the mic.
You talked about corporate culture and said that really should be for the good of the people, which I assume are all the employees and the customers. But what I've experienced in my 48 plus years living in the city of Santa Clara is that there are very, very distinct corporate cultures which are hard or impossible to change. I won't name them because I want to ask the question. Is it possible to change a corporate culture, and if so, how, and what can employees do to make working at a more amenable and more friendly?
So, while I feel that we are doing a lot of things right in terms of culture at Dreambox, I would say that it's a chapter. We're writing a novel, and we're in our third chapter. And we're still learning, and we're still innovating. And I believe that the model that I learned in business school was, a very shareholder-focused model. Your job as a leader is to deliver great shareholder value. And when you do that, you get happy customers that come back. And when you do that, you can create a big company that will attract great talent. And I think it's upside down. I think Dreambox is what Dreambox is because of the outstanding talent that we are privileged to have there. And it starts with people. And if you hire great people, smart, capable, and you support them and you remove impediments, guess what? They take really good care of your customer. And when you take really good care of your customers, you deliver shareholder value. The paradigm was upside down, I realized by the time I got to Dreambox. So I don't know, I think changing culture is really hard. I shared that story with you. I tried to think of things in small bits. Yeah, in small bits, and I think that you can build on small successes, and I think a cultural evolution is much more likely to lead to success than cultural change. And sometimes it requires, so there's a big bank that begins with a W that's going through a lot of soul searching right now, and you can change leadership and try to get some change, but maybe board level change is going to be required.
Why the other company starting with you that's faced with the same problem?
Right. And so I think that most great things start with people, and most unfortunate things start with people. And so I think culture is a reflection of values. And I think the way, so for Dreambox, we were very innovation focused and very kid focused. And what we needed to do was discover and celebrate the values that brought people there when they could have gone somewhere else, very close by, big company with an A, and made 2 times or 3 times as much. Why did they choose to come and stay? So one of the things I was faced with was when I got there were 8 people, and the former owners knew that they were, I think, 2 payrolls from going out of business. And nobody quit. These are people who were paying for their kids, paying their mortgage. Nobody quit. And so when I came in, we were going to pivot from a consumer model, B2C, to a B2B. These people who were successful in B2C were not necessarily the people who were going to be successful in B2B. And I have a pretty good network. I have people who would come and work for me again. So my choice was, do I blow it up and bring in the people from LeapFrog and other places? And I chose not to. And a lot of people tell me that was a mistake, because it was going to be harder for me, because those people who were successful in a B2C model were going to be very unlikely to succeed in a B2B model. And I said to myself, people who care, they were smart, they were capable, but they were so passionate about this company, about what they were doing for their kids. They built this thing for their kids. That was going to be the seed of my go-forward culture. So I think changing culture is very, very difficult. But I think it's worth the effort to try to evolve it. And I told you, I made the mistake of trying to change it coming in here. And it has evolved, and it continues to evolve, and we are not perfect. There are things that...
Function of the CEO, does the CEO have to initiate the change?
Maybe there are some cultures where that's required. I believe that the core group of people at Dreambox Learning embodied the culture. They didn't have tags, they didn't have names, they didn't have posters up in the walls, but they shared a common set of values that kept them together when things were ugly. So when people ask me for advice, I say, tell me what you love to do when the probability of success is low and when it's going to be really, really hard every day. What do you still do? That's what you're passionate about. And these people had something that was completely independent of me. I think another leader could have come in there and done something great with that core set of values and culture that existed at Dreambox Learning. I believe that.
Any more questions from the audience?
So Jessie, you talked a little bit about the, bringing some alignment between your personal values and the organizational values that you work with. So that's one good thing to see brought together. But you've also touched on sort of the times that we're in, the challenge of the times that we're in. And I'm curious to know if you have any insights to share about how you're working with your workforce when they themselves may not have some common ground, some common values that they can agree upon, or some direct conflict. It's one of the things that we struggle with on college campuses in terms of helping people to think about engaging in those other points of view. And since you talked about diversity with the big D, I was hoping you could share some thoughts about this.
So this might also get to the failure point. We had an all-hands meeting once, and one of my team members got up and gave a product update, and said something disparaging about the current Secretary of Education. And there was a lot of laughter in the room at this. She had some kind of public speaking and didn't know something pretty basic. I can't exactly remember what it was. Sorry?
It was her earrings where she blew 3 or 4 bad.
No, it was something about special ed or something. I can't remember what it was. But there was a lot of humor. I mean, people laughed at that. And somebody came into my office after the all hands and said, you know, I just want you to know I voted for Trump, and I believe that he's going to mix things up, and I feel like I can't tell people that I voted for Trump. And I'm offended that somebody will say something about the Secretary of Education and the whole company can laugh, and you didn't stand up and say, that's not what we're about at Dreambox. You're always touting diversity, you're always touting big D, and I'm telling you, I voted for Trump and I don't feel comfortable letting people know that. He was right. And so I had these brown bags periodically, and there was one scheduled, and I said on the brown bag, you know, we all can do better. We have to have these dialogues, and we can't have anybody feel like they're uncomfortable here. Everybody's welcome here. We'll get more done together. And he came up to me and he really appreciated that, because he didn't think that was going to happen. And secondly, he was courageous. That's benevolent friction, you know? Hard on ideas and soft on people. But I felt it was interesting that he didn't have as much criticism for the person who said it as he did for me as a leader for tolerating it. It was a lesson for me.
I'm curious about your, some of the stories or the experiences you've had about changing school culture. So you mentioned when you came to Dreambox, it was a B2C company. Mm-hmm. You needed to transition it to a B2B company, which was a culture change for the company itself. But when school cultures are your clients, it can be a very different kind of marketplace, right? What have your experiences been around trying to work with school cultures that are trying to move themselves from a traditional model of education to one where technology is much more integrated, where you might have blended learning? Yeah.
I love this question because, you know, if you guys think about the traditional technology adoption curve, the Mavericks all the way over, crossing the chasm. And so what we did in the beginning was we focused on the Mavericks. There are people who just love innovation, right? And they want to be the first. People who buy the Apple Watch first, you know, it doesn't matter, it's V1, they'll buy it, you know. People buy the Teslas if they can afford it. There are these people who are mavericky who want to be the innovators. And we aligned with them, and we penetrated very well. And we found that when we needed to cross the chasm, that we had to intentionally de-risk a move to Dreambox Learning. So their risk profile changed when you crossed the chasm, and they weren't so mavericky. Everybody wants to be an innovator, but nobody wanted to be first. That's what we learned. And so my team was frustrated because, these schools are never going to, and I said, folks, innovation happens every day in classrooms across America. Innovation doesn't mean technology. Innovation means innovation. And so what we have to do is find those sparks out there who are looking for something that Dreambox will help them succeed in implementing or doing. Our goal is to have teachers, what I call learning guardians, and learners feel more successful with Dreambox than without Dreambox. So instead of it being, education it's all backward in the system, it's like there are bright lights balkanized all over the United States and the world. Our challenge and opportunity is to align with those bright lights. And then we can de-risk it because we'll get data, we'll be able to show the impact of Dreambox learning, and then those people who are more risk averse will feel that they're not martyring their learning system, their learning communities, or their kids. They won't feel like they're adopting another technology that's just going to overpromise or disappear or whatever. We had to intentionally de-risk a move to blended learning and de-risk a move to Dreambox. So in the beginning, we had to spend as much time selling blended learning as we did Dreambox. And after we got the Stanford study and after we got the Harvard study, over time we built credibility and people stopped listening to us. And they would listen to their peers.
Right.
Yeah, that's what happened. So it was about de-risking, but it began with belief, like I said. If you believe that education is just pathetically bad, then you're not going to think there are any lights. If you believe that 9.9 out of 10 teachers really care about making their kids successful, and that they have a lot of structural impediments that thwart their innovation, if you believe that they're out there, then it's just a discovery exercise. And it's much more hopeful, it's much more opportunistic.
Yeah. We have a question over here.
Hi, my name is Deeksha. I'm graduating from the Masters in Ed Leadership program here at Santa Clara this summer. So I'm actually in the job market right now. And
Noted.
I'm making a transition from nonprofit education to ed technology. And I really liked what you said about finding a value-based environment, because nonprofits are about passion and being connected to the mission. So what questions would you suggest I ask recruiters or managers to identify if the values are more than just words on posters, but are actually embedded in their work?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So is the question, what can you do to make sure that the employers you're considering are worthy of your talents and your talents and your passion? So I have a couple of thoughts on that. The first is to never suspend your critical perspective. The second is to find people who are there, get them out of the element, and talk to them over a coffee. The third thing I would say is to find people who left and find out why they leave. A lot of people go to Glassdoor and whatever. I mean, you could do that, but I believe in the connection piece. I think you're going to learn a lot more from a conversation than you are from, maybe somebody who's telling a portion of a story. And I think you should ask, why should you come? And see what they say. If they lead with values, it's going to say, if they're going to tell you you're going to, make a lot of money, then you'll be able to align. I'm not saying make a lot of money is a bad thing, but you need to know what you value and then look for alignment. And the other thing I would say is just don't put so much pressure on yourself that it has to be the same now for the rest of your life. Your life is a novel. You're in a chapter. So define what that chapter needs to be for you, for your novel, and then you'll end that chapter and you'll begin another.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Good luck.
Let's turn the tables a little bit on that. So your company's grown quite a bit, from 8 employees to, I think you said 107 now?
170.
170, okay. So you're probably beyond the point where you're talking to each individual new employee, but maybe not. Maybe you're still there. What are you looking for?
Tension, yeah.
What do you look for? Questions do you ask a candidate to make sure their values are going to align the way you want them to?
So there are a couple buckets. One bucket is just curiosity. Another bucket is creative problem solving, including harnessing collective wisdom. And I always ask people that question that I just mentioned, what are you passionate about? And sometimes, especially young people, well, how do I know what I'm passionate about? It's not what you love necessarily, it's what you will do over and over again when the prospects of success are low and when it's really, really hard and you still find joy doing it. That's me on my A train going up to Harlem, right? And you can help people get to that, what the passion, and passions change too. Like you don't have to, it's a chapter, it's a novel, just one chapter. And so I probe for, do they know what that is? And does it align with what we believe? We believe every kid is a spark. We believe every kid deserves an excellent, engaging, personalized learning experience. And we believe that should happen regardless of where they live, what they look like, and how they speak. And if that resonates with people, they usually chime in and they'll tell you stories. And if it doesn't, it's a little flat. And I note that. I will say no to the really brilliant person who doesn't have passion more likely than I'll say no to that person. And I'll probably say yes to somebody who has that passion, who has that curiosity, and who has the tenacity for learning and innovation.
Have you read Excellent Sheep?
Yes.
So what is your commentary about the way in which a high-achieving society with high expectations actually drives the passion out of people?
Mm-hmm.
And if somebody like that is sitting in front of you in the interview, they get screened out, they get invited in. Which way?
So I'm one voice, and I think the high achieving, so this might be a design flaw, but we look for people who will be additive to a collaborative team environment, whose presence will increase the team's probability of success. We don't look for the single individual. Now, there's some exceptions to that. You know, we couldn't afford to hire 5 machine learning engineers, for example. So we had to find somebody who was enough of a maverick that they would come in without similar people. So we were looking for something very specific in terms of skill set, but it's not in lieu of, it's in addition to the values and the passion. So we tend to default to the team success, because, you know, it's like a marriage. You know, if you go into a marriage thinking that you give your 50% and they give their 50%, then you're covered 100%. But people can't always give their 50% because of whatever, health or stress or psychology, whatever. If you go in thinking you're going to give 100%, you're always going to be covered. So the team has to be covered, even if the individual contributor can't. It's very important at Dreambox. Yeah.
Great philosophy.
Well, thank you very much. We're at time, and I want to thank you both. One of the beliefs I hold is that effective leaders inspire hope. And in the face of some daunting propositions in business around diversity and inclusion and in education, you both have done a very nice job of inspiring us this afternoon. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.